The Celestial Concord Chamber was the largest room Elena Vasquez had ever seen. It stretched so far that the far walls disappeared into a soft blue haze. Floating platforms held delegates from hundreds of alien species. Strange lights moved through the air like living things. The ceiling showed the actual stars outside, making everyone feel very small. Elena stood on the human platform with her team of 12 diplomats. They wore simple gray suits, nothing fancy, nothing that tried too hard to impress. She had chosen this look on purpose. Let the aliens think humans were simple. Let them underestimate Earth. Around her, 847 species had gathered for this historic moment. Humanity was about to receive its official membership in the Galactic Council. 73 years ago, humans had discovered faster-than-light travel. They had stumbled into a galaxy that was already old, already organized, already ruled by ancient powers who saw themselves as gods among the stars. The Velethri were the oldest. They looked like giant insects standing upright, with hard shells the color of dried blood and large compound eyes that never blinked. They had founded the Council 12,000 years ago. To them, humanity was like a baby who had just learned to crawl. High Arbiter Thesson was their leader. He stood 15 feet tall on 6 powerful legs. His mandibles clicked constantly as he spoke, making sounds that the translation device in Elena's ear turned into words. "We welcome humanity to the Galactic Council," Thesson announced. His voice filled the massive chamber. "You are young, you are untested, but we see potential in your species. With proper guidance, you may one day become valuable members of our great civilization." Elena kept her face calm and polite. Inside, she felt anger burning. Proper guidance, as if humans were children who needed to be taught how to behave. The crystalline Athori floated nearby on their platform. They were beings made of living crystal, beautiful and cold. They communicated through light and vibration. Right now, they pulsed with colors that Elena's training told her meant amusement and contempt. They found humanity funny. A joke species that had somehow figured out space travel. Thesson continued reading the terms of humanity's membership. His mandibles clicked with each point, and Elena listened carefully. Humans would receive provisional membership. This was the lowest level. They could use certain trade routes, but only the ones the Council approved. They could settle on new planets, but only in areas the Council assigned. These areas, Elena knew, were the worst locations in the galaxy, barren rocks and frozen wastelands that no other species wanted. In exchange, humanity would provide soldiers. The outer rim of the galaxy was dangerous. A species called the Kreth Swarm lived there. They were violent and always hungry for new territory. The Council needed bodies to throw at them. Human bodies. The Council would also provide educational assistance to help humanity develop properly. They would share some technology, but only what they considered safe for a young species to have. Anything too advanced might be dangerous in primitive hands, Thesson explained. His tone suggested he was being very generous. And the seat on the Council? Humanity would have one. But they could not vote for 500 standard years. They could watch, they could listen, but they could not speak as equals. 500 years, 20 human generations. Elena's great-great-great-grandchildren might finally get to vote, if everything went perfectly. She thought about the message she had received that morning from Earth. The United Terran government had been very clear about what she should do. She had read their instructions 3 times to make sure she understood. Then she had smiled. "These terms are presented with great generosity," Thesson finished. "Humanity should feel honored. Many species wait thousands of years for such an opportunity. We offer it to you after only 73 years. This shows our faith in your potential." He looked at Elena with his unblinking compound eyes. All 847 species looked at her. She felt the weight of 1,000,000,000,000 alien gazes. "Ambassador Vasquez," Thesson said, "do you accept these terms on behalf of your species?" Elena stepped forward to the speaking platform. Her heart beat fast, but her voice stayed steady. "High Arbiter Thesson," she said, "honored members of the Galactic Council, humanity is grateful for this opportunity to join your great civilization." Thesson's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. Around the chamber, aliens relaxed. Another young species had accepted its place. Everything was going according to plan. "We have studied your terms carefully," Elena continued. "We have consulted with our government on Earth. We have discussed this matter with our colonies across 27 star systems." She paused. The chamber was completely silent. "We would like to propose some modifications to the agreement." Something changed in the room. It was subtle, but Elena felt it. The Velethri shifted on their legs. The Authori's colors flickered with surprise. This was not how things were done. New species did not propose modifications. They accepted what they were given and felt grateful. Thesson's voice carried a new edge. "Modifications? The terms of provisional membership have stood unchanged for 8,000 years. They are not subject to negotiation." "With respect, High Arbiter, everything is subject to negotiation." Elena kept her voice polite but firm. "Humanity believes in fair dealing. We would like to understand the terms better before we commit our species to them." She pulled out a small device and projected a document into the air above her platform. "For example," she said, "we notice that the Educational Assistance Program includes mandatory cognitive assessment. Could you explain what this involves?" Thesson's mandibles stopped clicking. For a moment, he was completely still. "These are technical matters," he said finally, "not appropriate for discussion in open council. We can address your concerns through proper administrative channels." "We would prefer transparency," Elena replied. "Humanity values openness in our agreements." The Authori were no longer pulsing with amusement. Their light had turned sharp and cold. Several other species were whispering among themselves. The Torani, a species of tall gray beings with large black eyes, leaned forward with sudden interest. Elena smiled at the High Arbiter. It was a warm smile, a friendly smile. But there was something behind it that made Thesson uncomfortable. "Perhaps we could schedule a meeting to discuss these details," she offered. "Humanity is simply curious. We want to understand our new friends better. Surely the Council welcomes curiosity." Thesson studied her for a long moment. In 12,000 years, he had welcomed hundreds of new species to the Council. None of them had ever asked questions. None of them had ever smiled like this human was smiling. "Of course," he said slowly. "The Council welcomes all questions. We will arrange a meeting." "Wonderful," Elena said. "Humanity looks forward to learning everything the Council wishes to teach us." She returned to her platform, still smiling. The ceremony continued, but something had shifted. The ancient powers of the galaxy had just met something new. They did not understand it yet. They did not see the danger. But somewhere deep in their old minds, they felt the first tiny hint of worry. Humanity had come to the table, and humanity had started asking questions. 3 months passed after humanity's first appearance at the Galactic Council. The elder races had stopped worrying about the strange human ambassador and her uncomfortable questions. Young species often showed spirit at first. That spirit always faded. It always did. Commander James Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the UTS Resolute, flagship of the 7th Terran Expeditionary Fleet. Through the view screen, he watched the swirling colors of the Colossi Nebula. It was beautiful and deadly. 3 species had been killing each other inside that cloud of gas and dust for 600 years. The Veth were reptilian creatures who breathed methane. The Serani were beings of living plasma contained in magnetic shells. The Mach were small and furry, but their weapons were as deadly as anyone's. Each species claimed the nebula belonged to them. Each species had treaties and ancient rights. Each species had been fighting so long they had forgotten how to stop. The Galactic Council had requested human intervention. James understood what that really meant. The elder races wanted humans to fix this problem because they were too lazy or too proud to do it themselves. Human soldiers would die in that nebula so that ancient civilizations could keep their hands clean. James smiled. He had other plans. "What do we know about the original conflict?" he asked his intelligence officer. Lieutenant Chen pulled up files on her screen. According to council records, the dispute began when the Mach established a mining colony in Sector 7. The Veth claimed it was their territory. The Serani got involved because the colony was near their breeding grounds. "That's the official story," James said. "What's the real story?" Chen smiled. She had been digging through classified databases for weeks. Humanity had learned early that the Council kept secrets. They had also learned how to find those secrets. "The real story is much more interesting," she said. 2,000 years ago, all three species signed a treaty dividing the nebula equally. But 80 years before the war started, the Mach secretly sold their section to a Velethri corporation. The Veth found out and tried to do the same thing. The Serani discovered both deals and attacked because they felt betrayed. James nodded slowly. "So all three species violated the original treaty. All three species have been lying about it for 600 years. "Yes, sir. They're all guilty. They're all innocent. They're stuck in a war that none of them can admit they started." James looked at the nebula. 600 years of death because nobody could tell the truth. "Open a channel to all three commanders," he said. "Tell them the human fleet wants to talk." 3 days later, James sat in a neutral station with leaders from all three species. They hated each other. They looked at James with suspicion and contempt. But they had agreed to meet because they were curious. The young species had promised them something none of them expected. "I know about the Velethri deals," James said simply. The room went cold. The Mach commander's fur stood up. The Veth's scales changed color. The Serani's plasma flickered with agitation. "You lie," the Mach said. "There were no deals." James projected the documents into the air. Signatures, dates, payment records. Everything the Council had buried in archives that provisional members were not supposed to access. "I'm not here to judge you," James said. "I'm here to offer you a way out. You've been fighting for 600 years over a secret that everyone knows but nobody admits. Your children have grown up knowing only war. Your economies are broken. Your people are tired." He looked at each of them in turn. "End it. Admit what happened. Sign a new treaty that recognizes reality. Go home to your families." "The Council will never allow it," the Serani commander said. "They benefit from our war. We buy their weapons. We distract their enemies." "The Council," James said slowly, "doesn't have to know the details. You tell them you found a diplomatic solution. You praise their wisdom in sending human mediators. Everyone saves face. Everyone wins." The negotiations took 8 more days. There were arguments. There were tears. At one point, the Mach commander threw a chair at the Veth commander. But in the end, they signed. 600 years of war ended with 3 signatures on a piece of paper. No human soldiers died. Almost no one died at all. The 7th Fleet went home as heroes. The Galactic Council was pleased. They sent messages of congratulation. They praised humanity's usefulness. But behind closed doors, the elder races were asking uncomfortable questions. How had the humans found those documents? The archives were supposed to be secure. The deals were supposed to be forgotten. And why had the humans solved the problem so quickly? The Council had expected years of bloody fighting. They had expected humans to prove themselves through sacrifice and death. Instead, humanity had found a shortcut. They had used intelligence instead of force. The Velethri did not like shortcuts. They did not like species that thought for themselves. Back on Nexus Prime, Ambassador Elena Vasquez continued her work. She attended meetings. She smiled at alien diplomats. She asked polite questions that made people uncomfortable. "I've been reading about the Tessari," she told a Velethri administrator one day. "Fascinating species. They achieved full membership 3,000 years ago, but I can't find any recent information about their culture or home world. Where are they now?" The administrator's mandibles clicked nervously. The Tessari were successfully integrated into Council civilization. They no longer maintain a separate identity. "Integrated," Elena repeated. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means they became part of something greater. This is the goal of all species. Individual identity is primitive. Unity is advanced." Elena nodded thoughtfully. "And what happened to the species who didn't want to integrate?" The administrator was silent for a long time. "That question is not appropriate for provisional members," he said finally. "You should focus on your duties, Ambassador. Humanity has much to learn." That night, Elena sent a coded message to Earth. She had been collecting information for 3 months, secret files, hidden records, stories that nobody was supposed to tell. The picture was becoming clear. The Galactic Council was not what it appeared to be. It wasn't a community of equals working together for peace. It was a machine designed to absorb young species and erase everything that made them unique. 17 species had applied for full membership in the last 1,000 years. 11 had been integrated. Their languages were gone. Their cultures were gone. Their people still existed, but they had been changed, modified, made into something that fit the Council's needs. 4 species had been declared developmental failures. They had been relocated to dying worlds at the edge of the galaxy, left to fade away quietly where nobody would notice. 2 species had simply disappeared. No records, no explanation. Nothing. Elena looked at the stars through her window. Somewhere out there, Earth was spinning. 7 billion humans were living their lives, raising their children, dreaming their dreams. They didn't know how much danger they were in. She thought about the educational assistance the Council had offered, the cognitive assessments, the genetic improvements, the cultural guidance programs. Now she understood what those words really meant. Humanity was supposed to become another Tessari, another species absorbed, another identity erased. But Elena had her orders from Earth, and those orders were very clear. Humanity would not integrate. Humanity would not disappear. Humanity was going to find another way. The emergency session was called for the 3rd hour of the artificial day on Nexus Prime. Something unusual was happening. Humanity had requested time to address the full council. They had never done this before. Provisional members were supposed to listen, not speak. High Arbiter. Thesson granted the request because he was curious. The humans had been behaving strangely for months. They asked questions no one else asked. They found information no one else found. They solved problems in ways that made no sense to the elder races. Perhaps Thesson thought it was time to remind them of their place. The Celestial Concord chamber filled slowly. Representatives from 847 species floated to their platforms. The lights dimmed as ancient tradition demanded. A single spotlight fell on the speaking platform at the center of the vast room. Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked into that light alone. She wore the same simple gray suit she had worn at her first appearance. Her face was calm. Her hands were steady. She looked up at the thousands of alien eyes watching her and felt no fear. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," she began. "Humanity thanks you for this opportunity to speak." Thesson's mandibles clicked with approval. At least the human remembered proper manners. 3 months ago, you offered humanity provisional membership," Elena continued. You promised guidance. You promised technology. You promised a seat at this table. She paused. The chamber was silent. We have spent these months studying your offer. We have learned about your council. We have read your history. And we have discovered something interesting. A holographic display flickered to life behind her. Data streams flowed across the air, documents and images and files that should have been impossible to find. These are records from your restricted archives, Elena said. They tell a story that the Council does not want new species to hear. Thesson rose on his 6 legs. Those archives are forbidden to provisional members. How did you access them? That's not important right now, Elena replied. What matters is what they contain. She gestured, and a list of names appeared in the air. 17 species applied for full council membership in the last 1,000 years. Where are they now? Nobody answered. I'll tell you, Elena said. The Tessari, the Morveth, the Kalani, 11 species in total. They were integrated. She spoke the word like it tasted bad. Their languages were erased. Their cultures were destroyed. Their people were modified, changed, turned into copies of existing council races. They still exist, but everything that made them unique is gone. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some species shifted uncomfortably on their platforms. The Dreth, the Serini, the Palax. 4 species were declared developmental failures. They were relocated to planets at the edge of the galaxy. Dying worlds with failing suns. They were left there to slowly disappear. Elena's voice grew harder. And then there are the Ven and the Jurath. 2 species that simply vanished. No records, no explanation, no graves. They asked too many questions. They refused to comply. And one day, they were just gone. High Arbiter. Thesson's voice boomed across the chamber. These accusations are lies. The Council has protected and guided young species for 12,000 years. We are not destroyers. We are builders. Are you? Elena asked. She brought up another set of documents. Then explain these. The Educational Assistance Program that all provisional members must accept. It includes cognitive dampening, drugs and procedures that reduce independent thinking. They make new species more compliant, more obedient. The Authority began pulsing with agitated light. Several other species were talking rapidly among themselves. The Genetic Improvement Program, Elena continued. It modifies reproductive systems. Within 3 generations, new species begin to think more like the elder races. They lose their creativity, their passion, their drive. They become exactly what you want them to be. She turned in a slow circle, looking at every platform in the chamber. The Galactic Council is not a community. It is a factory. Young species go in. Obedient servants come out. This has been your method for 12,000 years. Thesson's mandibles clicked frantically. Even if these claims were true, which they are not, what could humanity do about it? You are small. You are weak. You have been part of the galaxy for less than a century. The Council has existed for millennia. Elena smiled. It was the same smile she had shown 3 months ago. Now, finally, the elder races understood what it meant. Humanity declines your offer of membership, she said. The chamber exploded with noise. Aliens shouted in 100 languages. Thesson raised his massive arms for silence. You cannot decline. The compact is binding. Your species has already accepted our terms. Check your records, Elena said calmly. Every document humanity signed contained a specific clause. Article 7, subsection 23. It allows any species to withdraw from membership negotiations if they discover previously undisclosed terms. She projected the relevant section into the air. Your bureaucrats never noticed this clause because no species has ever used it. No species has ever wanted to leave. But it's there. We made sure it was there. Thesson stared at the document. His compound eyes scanned the text again and again. The clause was real. The clause was valid. Humanity had found a door that nobody knew existed. "This is unacceptable," he said finally. "If you leave, you lose access to trade routes. You lose protection. The Kreth swarm will target your worlds. You will be alone in a hostile galaxy." Elena gathered her documents and signaled her delegation to rise. "We have considered these risks," she said. "We prefer them to the alternative." She began walking toward the chamber doors. Her team followed in silence. "You cannot survive alone," Thessin shouted. "No species survives alone." Elena stopped at the doors. She turned back to face the chamber one last time. "That's the difference between us," she said. "For 12,000 years, you have used fear to control new species. You told them they needed you. You told them they would die without you. And they believed it because they had no other choice." She opened the doors. "Humanity does not believe in no other choice. We believe in making our own choices. We believe in standing on our own feet. We believe in the word that your integrated species have forgotten how to say." She stepped through the doorway. "The word is no, and we're saying it now." The doors sealed behind her with a sound that echoed through the chamber like thunder. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The elder races of the galaxy sat in stunned silence. Then the panic began. Humanity had done the impossible. They had walked away from the table. They had refused the council. They had said no. And somewhere in the vast chamber, in the shadows of forgotten platforms, representatives of integrated species watched the closed doors with something they had not felt in centuries: hope. In 12,000 years, no species had ever walked away from the Galactic Council. The elder races had built their entire civilization on one simple idea. Everyone needed them. Everyone would eventually join them. Resistance was impossible because resistance was pointless. Now that idea was broken. High Arbiter Thessin had not slept in 6 days. He stood in his private chamber surrounded by holographic reports, each one bringing worse news than the last. His mandibles clicked constantly, a nervous habit he had not shown since he was young. The Velethri High Council met in emergency session every day. They were the founders of the Galactic Council, the oldest and most powerful species in known space. Their entire society was built on hierarchy and order. A species that simply refused to obey did not fit into their understanding of reality. "We should destroy them," said Councillor Vethis. "Send the fleet. Eliminate the threat before it spreads." "We cannot," Thessin replied. "Humanity controls 3 major hyperspace corridors. If we attack, we lose access to half our trade routes. The economic damage would take centuries to repair." "Then blockade them. Starve them out. They are a young species. They cannot survive without resources. Our scouts report that humanity has colonies in regions we marked as uninhabitable. They have found ways to live where we cannot. A blockade would hurt us more than them." The council chamber fell silent. For the first time in millennia, the Velethri faced a problem they could not solve with power or patience. Across the galaxy, other species were reacting to the news. The Authori, those crystalline beings of pure logic, ran calculations that produced disturbing results. Their projections showed multiple futures, and in most of them, the Council's power declined sharply. The problem was not just humanity. The problem was what humanity represented. A message had begun spreading through the networks. It appeared on screens in integration centers where young species learned to forget themselves. It flickered across communication channels in areas the Council thought were secure. It was simple, just one word, but it carried the weight of revolution. No. The Tessari were the first to respond openly. They had been integrated 3,000 years ago. Their original language was dead. Their culture existed only in hidden memories passed from parent to child in secret. They had become perfect servants of the Council. but some of them remembered. An elderly Tessari named Velen requested a private audience with the High Council. This was unusual. Integrated species rarely spoke to the Velethri directly. They communicated through proper channels, following proper procedures. Thesson granted the request because he was desperate for information. Perhaps the Tessari knew something about humanity's plans. Velen entered the chamber slowly. He was old even by Tessari standards, his scales faded and his movements careful. He looked at the High Arbiter with eyes that held no fear. "We remember," Velen said simply. Thesson's antennae twitched. "Remember what?" "Everything. The ships that came to our world 3,000 years ago. The educators who taught us to forget our songs. The doctors who changed our children so they would think like you." Velen's voice was calm but steady. "We were told to forget, and we pretended to obey. But some of us kept the memories alive. We passed them down in whispers, in secret, in the dark." Thesson felt something cold in his chest. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because the humans have shown us something we had forgotten. It is possible to say no. It is possible to refuse. For 3,000 years, we believed we had no choice. Now we know that was a lie." The old Tessari turned to leave. At the door, he paused. "We are not alone," he said. "Every species you integrated still remembers something. Every culture you erased left seeds that grew in secret. You thought you were building an empire of obedience. You were actually building a garden of resistance, waiting for the right moment to bloom." He left without another word. Thesson stood alone in his chamber. His mandibles had stopped clicking. For the first time in centuries, he felt afraid. The reports came faster now. The Morveth, integrated 800 years ago, had begun speaking their dead language in public. The Kalani were refusing to send their children to council education centers. The Serini, those supposedly extinct developmental failures on their dying world, had sent a message to Earth. "We are still here. We remember. We want to live." And then came the worst news of all. The Kreth swarm had learned of humanity's departure. For centuries, human soldiers had helped defend the Outer Rim against their attacks. Now those soldiers were gone. The swarm saw opportunity. They launched the largest offensive in 100 years. Council defenses crumbled. 3 colony worlds fell in the first week. The elder races, who had grown comfortable letting others fight their battles, suddenly faced an enemy they had almost forgotten how to fight. The Council's military commanders sent urgent requests for reinforcements. But the integrated species were distracted by memories they should not have. The provisional members were asking questions they should not ask. The ancient unity that had held the galaxy together for 12,000 years was coming apart. On Earth, the United Terran government watched these events with careful attention. Ambassador Vasquez had returned home to a hero's welcome. She had done what no one thought possible. She had called the Council's bluff and won. But the leaders of Earth knew this was just the beginning. They had made enemies of the most powerful civilization in the galaxy. They had inspired hope in species that had forgotten how to hope. Now they had to deliver on that promise. President Chen addressed the people of Earth in a broadcast that reached every human world. "We have stepped away from a table that was never meant to include us as equals," she said. "We have refused to become another forgotten species in the Council's collection, but our work is not done. We have lit a fire in the galaxy. Now we must make sure that fire becomes a light, not a destruction." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "To the Council, I say this. We do not want war. We want respect. We want partnership. We want the chance to grow on our own terms, not yours. When you are ready to offer that, we will be ready to talk." She turned to address another audience, one that the Council never expected her to reach. "And to the other species out there, the ones who remember what they lost, the ones who dream of freedom in secret, you are not alone. Humanity stands with you. When you are ready to say no, we will be there to say it with you." The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, in hidden places and secret meetings, beings of 100 different species watched a small blue planet with new eyes. The age of the Galactic Council was ending. Something new was about to begin. 1 year had passed since humanity walked away from the Galactic Council. In that year, the galaxy had changed more than it had in the previous 1,000. The station called Horizon's Edge floated in neutral space, beyond the borders of Council territory. Humans had built it in 8 months, a feat the elder races said was impossible. It hung in the darkness like a beacon, a symbol of everything the Council had failed to prevent. High Arbiter. Thesson stood at the viewing window of his shuttle, watching the station grow larger as they approached. He had never traveled beyond Council space. No High Arbiter had in 8,000 years. The universe beyond their borders was supposed to be empty, dangerous, not worth visiting. Now he was here as a guest, not as a ruler, not as a judge, as a guest. The irony was not lost on him. His shuttle docked at the station's main port. Human guards waited there, polite but firm. They wore simple uniforms and carried weapons that Velethri engineers still could not understand. Humanity had not just survived alone, they had thrived. Ambassador Elena Vasquez met him at the entrance to the main conference hall. She looked older than he remembered, but her eyes still held that same sharp intelligence. That same quiet confidence that had unsettled him a year ago. "High Arbiter," she said with a small bow. "Thank you for accepting our invitation." "I had little choice," Thesson replied. His mandibles clicked once, softly. "The galaxy is changing. I must change with it or be left behind." Elena nodded. "That's the first wise thing I've heard a Velethri say." She led him into the conference hall. What he saw there made him stop. The room was filled with representatives from 47 species. Some he recognized as former council members who had defected. Others were species from the uncharted regions, beings the council had never contacted. Still others were faces he had hoped never to see again. The Tessari were there, led by old Velen, who sat straight and proud in traditional robes that had not been worn in 3,000 years. The Morveth stood nearby, their bioluminescent skin glowing with patterns that their integrated cousins had forgotten how to make. The Kalani, the Serini, the Palax, all the developmental failures who were supposed to have died quietly on distant worlds, they had survived, they had found each other, and they had found humanity. "Welcome to the Free Systems Alliance," Elena said. Thesson walked slowly to the seat that had been prepared for him. It was equal in height and comfort to every other seat in the room. This was different from the council chamber, where the Velethri sat above everyone else. Here, everyone was at the same level. "1 year ago," Elena began, addressing the room, "humanity refused to accept unfair terms from the Galactic Council. We were told we would die alone. We were told no species could survive without the Council's guidance." She looked at the gathered representatives. "We proved them wrong, but we did not do it alone. Every species in this room took a risk. Every species in this room said no to something they were told they could not refuse. Together we have built something new." Thesson listened in silence. His compound eyes scanned the room, counting the species, calculating the implications. The Free Systems Alliance was small compared to the Council, but it controlled important territory. Its members were motivated by something the Council had forgotten long ago: hope. "High Arbiter," Elena said, turning to him. "You asked to speak to us. We are listening." Thesson rose slowly. Every eye in the room watched him. Species that had feared the Velethri for millennia now looked at him with something new. Not fear, curiosity. I came to offer a warning, he said. The Kreth swarm grows stronger every day. Our defenses weaken. Without cooperation between our civilizations, the swarm will eventually threaten everyone. Is that why you came? Velen asked. His voice was quiet but carried across the room. To ask for our help after what your council did to my people. Thessen's mandibles clicked nervously. I came because I had no choice. The council is dying. We can feel it. Species we trusted for centuries now question our authority. Systems we controlled for millennia now refuse our commands. The foundation we built over 12,000 years is cracking beneath our feet. He looked at Elena. Humanity did this. You showed the galaxy that the council could be refused. You proved that our power was built on belief, not reality. Once that belief was broken, everything followed. And now you want our help to rebuild it, Elena said. No. Thessen surprised himself with the word. Now I want to understand how we got it so wrong. The room fell silent. A Velethri High Arbiter admitting error was something that had never happened before. We built the council to bring order to chaos, Thessen continued. We truly believed we were helping young species. We gave them technology. We protected them from threats. We taught them how to live in the galaxy. You erased them, Velen said. Yes. Thessen's voice was heavy. We saw differences as problems to be solved. We thought unity meant sameness. We never understood that a species could be different and still be valuable. We never understood that diversity was strength, not weakness. He looked around the room at all the faces watching him. I am old. I will not live to see how this ends. But before I die, I want to know, is there room at your new table for the Velethri? Not as masters, not as rulers, as equals. Elena studied him for a long moment. Then she looked at the other representatives. Some nodded, some hesitated, some showed nothing at all. That depends, she said finally. Are you willing to give up your position at the top? We have already lost it, Thessen replied. The question is whether we fall or whether we choose to step down. Elena glanced at Velen. The old Tassari held her gaze for a long moment. Then he nodded, just slightly. The Free Systems Alliance believes in second chances, Elena said. We believe that any species can change if they truly want to. But trust must be earned. If the Velethri want a seat at this table, they must prove they deserve it. She extended her hand toward Thessen, a human gesture of agreement. We've saved you a seat, High Arbiter, but you sit as equals or you don't sit at all. The choice is yours. Thessen looked at her hand. Such a small thing. Such a simple gesture. Yet it represented something larger than any treaty or war or empire. It represented a chance to become something better. Slowly, carefully, he reached out with one of his upper limbs and grasped her hand. I accept, he said. The room erupted in sounds of surprise and approval. Representatives from 47 species watched as the most powerful being in the old galaxy bowed his head to the representatives of the new one. Later, the historians would call this the Horizon Accords. They would write about how the Free Systems Alliance grew to include hundreds of species. They would describe the new age of cooperation that followed, the golden era when different civilizations learned to work together without losing themselves. But Elena would always remember this moment differently. She would remember the feeling of a giant insect hand wrapped around her small human fingers. She would remember the hope in old Velen's eyes. She would remember the sound of 47 species breathing together in a room that should not have existed. Humanity had walked away from an unfair table. They had built a new one. And now, finally, everyone was welcome to sit. The galaxy would never be the same, and somewhere on a small blue planet called Earth, children were growing up in a universe where the word no had changed everything. The end. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the back of the Great Hall. She had stood there for 3 years now. Before her, dozens of ambassadors had stood in that same spot. 60 years of human ambassadors, all standing at the back, behind every other species in the galaxy. The grand atrium of the Galactic Council was beautiful. Crystal pillars rose hundreds of meters into the air. Light from a dying star poured through massive windows. Thousands of aliens from hundreds of worlds filled the curved seats that faced the central platform. It was the heart of galactic civilization, and humanity sat at the very edge of it. Elena watched as the Velkari ambassador spoke. His species looked like tall insects with shimmering blue shells. They had been part of the council for 12,000 years. When he spoke, everyone listened. When humanity spoke, delegates checked their devices or talked among themselves. The matter of the provisional species will now be addressed, announced High Chancellor Vormesh. He was Thraxian, a species of gray-skinned beings with 4 arms and ancient, tired eyes. The Thraxians had helped found the council 15,000 years ago. They believed this gave them the right to rule it. Elena straightened her uniform. Provisional species. That was what they called humanity. For 60 years, humans had been provisional. They were always almost ready for full membership, almost equal, almost worthy, but never quite. Humanity has served the council well, Vormesh continued. His voice echoed through the hall. Their peacekeeping forces have ended 3 conflicts. Their scientists have improved our medical technology. Their engineers have made our ships faster. Elena felt hope rise in her chest. Perhaps today would be different. However, Vormesh said, and that single word crushed her hope like a boot on glass. The Council believes humanity requires more time to mature. We propose extending the provisional period by 100 standard years. 100 more years. 100 more years of standing at the back. 100 more years of being ignored. Elena had expected this. She had prepared herself for disappointment, but hearing it still hurt. The Velkari ambassador made a sound like clicking stones. It was laughter. The young species is eager, he said. But eagerness is not wisdom. Perhaps in another century the humans will understand. Other delegates joined his laughter. The sound filled the great hall. Elena kept her face calm and still. She had learned to hide her anger long ago. All human ambassadors learned this lesson quickly. The vote was quick. Humanity was not allowed to vote on matters concerning their own status. That was one of many rules that only applied to provisional species. The resolution passed easily. Most species did not even bother to vote against it. They simply did not care about humanity one way or another. Elena returned to the human embassy that evening. It was a small building on the outer ring of Nexus Station. Other embassies had entire districts. Humanity had 3 floors. Her aide, Commander James Chen, was waiting for her. His face was grim. He held a data tablet in his hands like it was something dangerous. The intelligence report came in, he said. You need to see this. Elena took the tablet and began to read. With each line, her expression grew darker. With each paragraph, 60 years of patient diplomacy burned away inside her mind. The report was clear. The Council had been stealing from humanity since the beginning. Every scientific breakthrough humans shared was copied and given to elder species first. Every military innovation was studied and distributed to potential rivals. The Velkari had human shield technology. The Thraxians had human medical advances. They all benefited from human genius, and they gave nothing in return. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was the secret agreement. 20 years ago, the Velkari and Thraxians had signed a private treaty. They agreed to keep humanity provisional forever, not because humans were unready. Because humans were too capable, too innovative, too dangerous to their power. They feared what humanity might become if given equal standing. Elena set down the tablet. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, from rage. "How long have you known?" she asked. "We confirmed it yesterday," Chen replied. "Our agents have been investigating for years, but we needed proof. And now we have it." "Yes, Ambassador, now we have it." Elena walked to the window. Outside, Nexus Station stretched in every direction. Millions of beings from hundreds of worlds lived and worked here. Humanity had helped build this station. Human engineers had designed its power systems. Human doctors staffed its hospitals. Human soldiers protected its borders. And humanity was still treated like children begging for scraps at the adults' table. For 60 years, humanity had played by the rules. They had been patient. They had been humble. They had believed that if they worked hard enough and proved themselves worthy, they would be accepted. They had been fools. "Contact Earth Command," Elena said. Her voice was calm now, cold and calm like space itself. "Use the secure channel." "What message should I send?" Elena thought about every insult humanity had endured, every stolen technology, every dismissive laugh, every century added to their provisional status. She thought about her predecessors, good men and women who had wasted their lives trying to earn respect from beings who would never give it. "One word," she said. "Send one word." Chen waited. Enough. On Earth, far across the galaxy, the leaders of humanity received that message. Within hours, they gathered in secure chambers beneath old mountains. They reviewed the evidence of council betrayal. They discussed options that had been prepared years ago, waiting for this moment. The vote was unanimous. Humanity had tried peace. Humanity had tried patience. Humanity had tried playing the game by rules designed to keep them losing. Now humanity would change the game entirely. Back on Nexus Station, Elena Vasquez began preparing her final address to the Galactic Council. She wrote carefully, choosing each word with precision. This speech would not ask for respect. It would take respect. She worked through the night. When morning came, she reviewed her words one last time. Then she transmitted the document to every human embassy, every human ship, every human station across the galaxy. The message was simple. In 72 hours, humanity would speak to the Council one last time. Every human should be ready. Ready for what? The other species would wonder this when they learned of humanity's mysterious preparations. They would laugh and dismiss human activities as meaningless gestures. They would learn very soon that humans never made meaningless gestures. Elena Vasquez smiled for the first time in months. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who had finally stopped playing a rigged game. Humanity was done asking permission. Now the galaxy would learn what happened when humans stopped being polite. High Chancellor Vormesh called the emergency session with little concern. Some minor issue with the humans, his aides had told him, probably complaints about the vote 3 days ago. He had dealt with upset provisional species before. A few kind words, some vague promises, and they always calmed down. He took his seat at the center of the great platform. Around him, delegates from across the galaxy filed into their places. The noise of 1,000 conversations filled the air. Nobody seemed worried. Why would they be? This was routine. Then someone noticed the empty seats. The human section was vacant. Not a single human sat in the small space assigned to their delegation. Their seats were clean and bare, as if no one had ever used them. "Where are the humans?" asked the Velkari ambassador. His voice carried amusement. "Have they decided to sulk instead of attend?" Laughter rippled through the hall. Vormesh raised his hand for silence. "We shall proceed. If the humans wish to miss this session, that is their choice." But before he could continue, the great holographic projector at the center of the hall activated. A massive image of Ambassador Elena Vasquez appeared. She stood straight and tall, wearing the formal uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. Her face showed no emotion. "Members of the Galactic Council," she began. Her voice was calm and clear. "I speak to you today not to beg, not to plead, not to ask for the respect that should have been given freely." Vormesh frowned. This was not how provisional species addressed the Council. There were protocols, rules, proper procedures. 60 years ago, humanity joined this council, Vasquez continued. We were young, we were eager. We believed that the galaxy was governed by wise and fair beings who would judge us by our actions. The hall grew quiet. Something in her voice demanded attention. We were wrong. Vasquez's image turned slowly, as if she could see every delegate in the room. For 60 years, humanity has served this council. Our peacekeepers have died protecting species who mock us. Our scientists have shared discoveries that were stolen and given to others. Our engineers have built systems that power your stations while we are kept in the smallest offices. The Velkari ambassador shifted uncomfortably. Several delegates exchanged nervous glances. We have obtained proof, Vasquez said, of a secret agreement between the Velkari hegemony and Thraxian collective, an agreement to keep humanity provisional forever, not because we are unready, because you fear what we might become. Vormesh felt cold shock run through his body. How had they learned of that treaty? It was protected by the highest security measures. You have treated us as children, Vasquez continued. You have laughed at us. You have stolen from us. You have lied to us. She paused. We accept your judgment. If we are not worthy of this council, then we shall leave it. The silence in the hall was complete. As of this moment, the United Earth government has voted to withdraw from the Galactic Council. This withdrawal is total and permanent. All human participation in council activities ends now. Vormesh stood quickly. You cannot simply leave. There are treaties, obligations. Vasquez's image looked directly at him. We are provisional members. Provisional members may withdraw at any time. That is your rule. A rule you created to make lesser species feel they could leave, while knowing none would dare. She smiled slightly. We dare. This is foolish, the Velkari ambassador declared. Humans need the council. Without our trade networks, your economy will collapse. Without our protection, you will be vulnerable. You are throwing away everything over wounded pride. Perhaps, Vasquez replied. Let us see who needs whom. She straightened her shoulders. I now announce the following actions, effective immediately. All human peacekeeping forces are recalled to Earth space. All human scientific exchange programs are terminated. All human engineers maintaining council infrastructure are withdrawn. All human medical personnel at council facilities will depart within 30 standard days. Murmurs of concern began spreading through the hall. The scale of what she described was becoming clear. All human patrolled trade routes are now unprotected, Vasquez continued. All human-maintained systems require new operators. All human-developed technologies provided under provisional membership terms are no longer supported. You are bluffing, someone shouted. Humans cannot survive without us. That is possible, Vasquez admitted. Perhaps humanity will struggle. Perhaps we will suffer. But we are very good at surviving hard times. Can you say the same? She straightened once more. To the smaller species of this council, the ones who have shown us kindness over the years, we are sorry. We did not wish to cause hardship, but we cannot continue to accept treatment that no being should accept. We hope you understand. Her gaze swept across the hall one final time. To the elder races who have ruled this council for millennia, I offer no apology. You created this situation through your arrogance. Whatever happens next is your responsibility. The Velkari ambassador made a dismissive gesture. Go then. Run home to your little planet. In a year you will come crawling back begging for readmission." Vasquez actually laughed. It was a genuine warm laugh that seemed completely out of place. "Ambassador, you have never understood humanity. Not once in 60 years have you tried to understand us." She leaned forward slightly. "We do not crawl. We do not beg. When we fall, we stand again. When we face walls, we break them down. When we are told something is impossible, we do it anyway. This is not pride. This is simply what we are." Her image began to fade. "Goodbye, Council. We will not meet again until you learn to treat others as equals. Based on your history, that may take several thousand years. Humanity is patient. We can wait." The hologram vanished. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The grand atrium, which had heard countless debates and declarations over 15,000 years, had never experienced anything like this. Then the Velkari ambassador laughed. "Children," he said. "Foolish, emotional children. They will return within months." Others joined his laughter, but it was forced. Nervous. Some delegates were already checking their devices, calculating how many humans worked in their systems. High Chancellor Vormesh did not laugh. He sat very still, remembering something a human diplomat had told him years ago. Humans, she had said, were slow to anger. They gave many chances. They preferred peace to conflict. But when they finally decided to act, she had said, they did not make empty threats. They did not bluff. They did not show their cards until they were ready to win. Vormesh looked at the empty human seats. He thought about every human engineer, doctor, soldier, and scientist scattered across council space, thousands of them, tens of thousands, all of them leaving, all at once. "What have we done?" he whispered. Nobody heard him. Everyone was too busy laughing at the foolish humans who had just made the biggest mistake of their short history. They would not be laughing for long. On every station, every colony, every outpost across the galaxy, humans were already packing their things. They moved calmly and efficiently. No panic, no drama, just quiet, organized departure. They had been preparing for this moment for years. They had hoped it would never come, but they had prepared anyway. That was another thing the galaxy did not understand about humanity. They always had a plan. 30 days after humanity's withdrawal, the galaxy began to fall apart. It started with small things. A mining station in the outer regions lost power for 6 hours because nobody knew how to repair the human-designed generators. A hospital ship ran out of a critical medicine that human scientists had developed, and no one remembered the formula. A trade convoy was attacked by pirates in a corridor that human patrol ships had protected for decades. Small things, easy to dismiss, easy to blame on bad luck or temporary problems, but the small things kept happening, and they grew larger every day. Director Kethaval of the Kaveth Mining Consortium stared at the reports on his desk. His species had 4 eyes, and all of them were tired from reading bad news. The consortium controlled 60% of the galaxy's rare mineral extraction. They were one of the wealthiest organizations in council space, and they were dying. "Explain this to me again," he said to his aide. Slowly. The aide trembled. "Sir, humans designed and maintained most of our extraction systems. They were more efficient than our own engineers. Cheaper, too. We replaced our workers with human contractors over the past 40 years. And now? Now the humans are gone. Our old engineers retired years ago. The young ones never learned the old systems, and they cannot understand the human systems." Kethval looked at the production numbers. Down 60%. 60% in just 30 days. "How long until we are operational again?" The aide hesitated. "Our best estimate is 2 to 3 years, if we can find engineers willing to study the human designs." 2 to 3 years. The consortium would be bankrupt in 2 to 3 months. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out in 1,000 different places. On Velkar Prime, the jewel of the Velkari hegemony, a plague spread through the southern continent. It was a strange sickness that caused fever and weakness. The Velkari doctors worked desperately to stop it, but nothing seemed to help. Minister Velnath demanded answers. Where did this plague come from? Why can we not cure it? The chief medical officer bowed his head. Minister, this disease has existed on our world for centuries. It was never a problem before because human xenobiologists contained it. Contained it? How? They developed treatments. They monitored outbreaks. They had been doing this quietly for 40 years, since they first arrived on our world. We never asked them to do it. They simply did it because they could help. Velnath felt sick. And now they are gone. Yes. And they took their knowledge with them. We do not have their research. We do not have their medicines. We do not even know exactly how they were stopping the spread. The plague would kill thousands before the Velkari developed their own treatments. Thousands of deaths that could have been prevented. Thousands of families destroyed because the Velkari had laughed when the humans left. In the Orion Trade Corridor, the busiest shipping route in the galaxy, chaos ruled. Pirate attacks increased by 400% in the first month alone. Human patrol ships had kept the corridor safe for decades. They knew every hiding spot, every ambush point, every trick that pirates used. Now the humans were gone, and the pirates celebrated. Merchant ships refused to travel without military escorts. Military escorts were not available because council forces were spread too thin. Trade slowed to a crawl. Goods that once moved freely across the galaxy now sat in warehouses, waiting for transport that never came. Prices rose, shortages spread. Worlds that depended on imported food began to ration. Worlds that exported manufactured goods could not find buyers. The economy, which had seemed so strong just months ago, started to crack. On Nexus Station, riots broke out for the first time in 3,000 years. Supplies were running low. The power grid failed for hours at a time. Sanitation systems backed up because nobody knew how to maintain the human-installed equipment. High Chancellor Vormesh watched the reports come in from across the galaxy. Each one was worse than the last. Each one proved that the Velkari ambassador had been completely wrong. Humanity did not need the Council. The Council needed humanity. How did this happen? Vormesh asked his advisors. How did we become so dependent on one species? His chief of staff answered carefully. They were useful, Chancellor, and cheap, and reliable. Over the decades, we gave them more and more tasks, not because we planned to, simply because they did everything so well. And we never noticed? We noticed. We simply did not care. They were provisional members. We thought they would always be there, grateful for any opportunity we gave them. Vormesh closed his eyes. 60 years of taking humans for granted. 60 years of treating them like servants while they quietly became essential to everything the Council did. Now they were gone, and the Council was learning a painful lesson about the cost of arrogance. The smaller species reacted differently. Many of them had always resented the elder races. They had watched humanity's mistreatment and seen themselves in it. Now they watched humanity's revenge and felt hope. 3 species formally declared their withdrawal from the Council in the 2nd month. They sent messages to Earth asking for separate treaties. They would rather deal with humans directly than remain part of a dying system. More species began to whisper about following them. The Thoraxian economy collapsed first. Their currency, once the strongest in the galaxy, became worthless overnight. Human trade agreements had backed that currency. When humanity declared those agreements void, the foundation disappeared. Thraxian banks failed. Thraxian businesses closed. Thraxian citizens protested in streets that had not seen unrest for 5,000 years. The Velkhari blamed the Thraxians. The Thraxians blamed the Velkhari. Their ancient alliance, which had dominated the council for millennia, cracked under the pressure of mutual accusation. Vormesh tried to hold things together. He called emergency sessions. He proposed emergency measures. He begged the elder races to work together instead of fighting. Nobody listened. Everyone was too busy trying to save themselves. On Earth, humanity watched the chaos unfold. They took no pleasure in it. They had not wanted this. They had simply wanted to be treated fairly. Ambassador Vasquez, now retired to a small house by the sea, received updates every day. She read about the suffering, the death, the economic destruction. It weighed on her conscience, but she did not regret her decision. Sometimes she knew you had to let something break before it could be rebuilt properly. The council had been rotten for thousands of years. It had treated entire species as lesser beings. It had stolen and lied and oppressed. Now it was facing the consequences. In the grand atrium, where delegates had once laughed at humanity, Vormesh stood before half-empty seats. Many ambassadors had not come. Many embassies had closed. The great hall felt hollow and sad. "We must contact the humans," Vormesh said. "We must apologize. We must ask them to return." The Velkhari ambassador, whose arrogance had finally been broken by watching his homeworld suffer, nodded slowly. "I will support this proposal." The vote passed. For the first time in galactic history, the Council would send a diplomatic mission to beg a lesser species for help. But as they prepared their mission, they received disturbing news from the border of human space. Humanity was not as weak as they had believed. Humanity was not weak at all. 60 days after humanity's withdrawal, the Galactic Council held its emergency summit. The grand atrium looked nothing like it had 2 months ago. The lights flickered because of power rationing. Many seats sat empty because delegates could not afford the journey. The air itself felt heavy with despair. High Chancellor Vormesh stood at the central platform, looking older than he had ever looked before. 4 arms that once gestured with authority now hung limply at his sides. His voice, once strong enough to silence thousands, cracked as he spoke. "The situation is critical," he announced. "Full economic collapse has spread to 70% of council space. Trade has effectively stopped. 12 more species have declared withdrawal this week alone." The remaining delegates murmured anxiously. Some openly wept. The galaxy they had known was dying before their eyes. "We must restore relations with humanity," Vormesh continued. "We have prepared a diplomatic mission. We will apologize. We will offer full membership. We will give them everything they asked for." "It is too late for diplomacy," shouted a delegate from a minor species. "You should have thought of this before you spent 60 years treating them like dirt." Others shouted their agreement. The hall descended into chaos as species turned on each other, old resentments boiling over. Vormesh tried to restore order, but nobody listened anymore. His authority meant nothing in a council that was falling apart. Then the Velkhari ambassador rose. His shell had lost its shimmer. He looked worn and defeated, but his voice still carried across the hall. "Enough," he said. "We have talked enough. We need action. I propose we send a fleet to human space, a show of force, remind them that the Council still has military power." "That is madness," Vormesh protested. "If we threaten them, they will never negotiate." "They are ignoring our messages anyway," the ambassador replied. "Perhaps they will respond to something they cannot ignore." The debate raged for hours. In the end, desperation won over wisdom. The council voted to send a Velkhari battle fleet to the border of human space. Not to attack, they told themselves, just to negotiate from a position of strength. It was a stupid decision made by frightened beings. But frightened beings often make stupid decisions. Admiral Velthrak led the fleet. 100 warships, the pride of the Velkari hegemony. They jumped through hyperspace toward Earth's territory, confident that the young humans would be intimidated by such a display of power. They emerged at the border coordinates, expecting to see empty space, perhaps a few small human patrol ships. Instead, they saw the adamantine line. Admiral Velthrak stared at his screens in disbelief. Massive space stations floated in perfect formation, their surfaces bristling with weapons. Hundreds of warships patrolled between them, each one larger and more advanced than anything the Council had ever seen. "That is impossible," he whispered. "Where did they get this technology?" His sensor officer's voice trembled. "Admiral, I am reading energy signatures from their weapon systems. They exceed anything in our database. These weapons could destroy our entire fleet in minutes." Velthrak felt true fear for the first time in his long military career. "How? The humans were supposed to be centuries behind us." "Apparently," his executive officer said quietly, "they were not." A message came through, a human voice, calm and professional. "Velkari fleet, you have entered Earth Defense Zone. State your intentions." Velthrak swallowed his pride. "We are here on behalf of the Galactic Council. We seek diplomatic negotiations with Earth government." There was a pause. Then, "Your fleet configuration suggests military action, not diplomacy. You have two options: withdraw immediately or be destroyed. You have 5 minutes to decide." "This is outrageous," Velthrak shouted. "The Council demands respect." "The Council has 60 seconds remaining of goodwill," the human voice replied. "After that, we will assume hostile intent. 4 minutes, 50 seconds. Velthrak looked at his tactical display, his 100 ships against their thousands, his outdated weapons against their advanced technology. It would not be a battle. It would be a massacre. "All ships, reverse course," he ordered. The words tasted like ash in his mouth. The fleet withdrew. The mightiest military force the Velkari had ever assembled retreated without firing a single shot. When the report reached Nexus Station, the remaining Council delegates sat in stunned silence. Vormesh read the details twice, then a third time, as if hoping the words might change. "They have been hiding their true capabilities," he said finally. "All along, every technology they shared with us was old, outdated. They kept their real advances secret." "But why?" someone asked. Vormesh understood now. Because they knew. They knew we were suppressing them. They knew we would never accept them as equals, so they pretended to be weaker than they were. They let us feel superior while they built their strength in secret. The Velkari ambassador slumped in his seat. "We created this. We pushed them to this. Every insult, every stolen technology, every 100-year extension of their provisional status. We taught them not to trust us." "What do we do now?" Vormesh asked. The question was not rhetorical. He genuinely did not know. A young delegate from a species called the Fenri rose. His people had been kind to humans over the years. "We grovel," he said simply. "We admit we were wrong. We accept whatever terms they offer. We have no other choice." "The Council does not grovel," an elder delegate protested. "Then the Council dies," the Fenri replied. "Look around you. Our economy is destroyed. Our alliances are broken. Our military is worthless. The humans hold all the power now, and we have only ourselves to blame." Vormesh raised his hand for silence. "We will send a diplomatic mission. A proper one this time. No threats. No demands. We will ask humbly if humanity will speak with us again." The message was sent. Days passed with no response. A week, then another. Finally, on the 6th day after the message was sent, a response came. It was short. "Ambassador Vasquez will receive your delegation on Earth. Geneva. Hall of Nations. Come with authority to negotiate binding agreements. Come prepared to accept significant changes to council structure. Come understanding that the old ways are dead. Vormesh read the message to the council. He expected outrage at the demands. Instead, he saw only relief. Relief that humanity had responded at all. A delegation was assembled. Vormesh himself would lead it, along with the Velkari ambassador and representatives from 12 other major species. They would travel to Earth, to human soil, and ask humanity for mercy. As his ship prepared to depart, Vormesh looked out at Nexus Station. Lights flickered across its surface. Sections had gone dark entirely. The great monument to galactic civilization was failing. He thought about the first time he had seen humans in the council chamber. Small, short-lived creatures with soft bodies and loud emotions. He had dismissed them immediately. Everyone had. Now those same creatures held the fate of the galaxy in their hands. Vormesh wondered what else he had been wrong about. He wondered if the council had ever truly understood anything at all. The ship jumped to hyperspace, toward Earth, toward judgment. Behind them, the galaxy continued to unravel. Trade routes remained closed. Economies stayed in ruins. Species that had lived together for millennia now viewed each other with suspicion and hate. Humanity had not caused this destruction. The Council's own arrogance had built the foundations for collapse. Humanity had simply removed the pillars holding it up. Now everything that had been built on those rotten foundations was falling down, and only humanity could help rebuild it. The council delegation arrived on Earth on a cool autumn morning. High Chancellor Vormesh stepped off his shuttle onto the landing platform and stopped immediately. He could not move. He could only stare. He had expected a primitive world, a struggling civilization, a people desperate for galactic contact. Instead, he saw towers of glass and steel reaching toward the clouds. Flying vehicles moved in orderly streams between buildings. Parks and gardens broke up the urban landscape with patches of green and blue. Children played in open spaces while adults walked confidently through clean streets. This was not a struggling world. This was a thriving one. "You seem surprised," Ambassador Vasquez said. She stood waiting for them, dressed in simple civilian clothes instead of her diplomatic uniform. She looked relaxed, peaceful, nothing like the stern woman who had addressed the council months ago. "I expected less," Vormesh admitted. "Everyone does," Vasquez replied. "Come, the Hall of Nations is this way." The delegation walked through the streets of Geneva. Aliens had never walked openly on Earth before. Humans stopped and stared, but nobody showed fear. Children waved. Some adults nodded respectfully. The Velkari ambassador flinched at every friendly gesture. He had expected hatred. He had expected anger. Instead, he received polite curiosity. "They do not hate us?" he asked Vasquez. "Why would they? You have never done anything to them personally. Most humans do not even know the details of what happened in the council. But we treated your people terribly." Vasquez smiled slightly. "Yes, but we do not teach our children to hate. We teach them to be strong. There is a difference." The Hall of Nations was an old building, preserved from centuries past. It had witnessed countless human negotiations, treaties, and agreements. Now it would witness the most important negotiation in galactic history. The council delegation was led to a large room with a round table. No seat was higher than another. No position was more important. Everyone was equal here. Vormesh noticed this immediately. He understood the message. Vasquez took her seat across from the delegation. Behind her sat representatives from Earth's government, including the Secretary General of the United Human Federation, a tall woman named Amara Okonkwo. "Let us begin," Okonkwo said. "You requested this meeting. Speak." Vormesh stood. His prepared speech suddenly felt worthless. He set aside his notes and spoke from his heart. Humanity, we have wronged you. For 60 years we treated you as inferiors. We stole your achievements. We blocked your advancement. We laughed at your dignity. We were arrogant, cruel, and blind. He bowed his head. I offer no excuses. There are none. I offer only apology and a promise that we wish to do better. The room was silent. Vormesh waited for a response. Vasquez spoke. We accept your apology. It changes nothing, but we accept it. Vormesh looked up with hope. Then you will return to the council? We offer full membership, equal status, everything you deserved from the beginning. No. The single word hit the delegation like a physical blow. The Velkari ambassador leaned forward. What do you mean, no? Is that not what you wanted? Vasquez shook her head. 60 years ago, yes, we wanted acceptance. We wanted to belong. We wanted to earn our place among you. She stood and walked to a window. Outside, the city of Geneva stretched toward distant mountains. But we have learned something important during these months alone. We do not need you. We never did. We joined the council because we believed in the idea of galactic cooperation. We stayed because we hoped the reality would match the idea. She turned back to face them. The reality was corrupt. The reality was unfair. The reality was designed to keep power in the hands of species who claimed it by accident of age, not merit of wisdom. Then what do you want? Vormesh asked. Okonkwo answered. The council will be restructured, completely. No more elder and junior species. No more provisional membership. Every species gets equal voting rights from the moment they join. That would end thousands of years of tradition, the Velkari ambassador protested weakly. Yes, that is the point. Vasquez continued. All technologies stolen from humanity over the past 60 years will be documented and formally returned. All officials who participated in the suppression of human advancement will face a public tribunal. Their crimes will be recorded in galactic history forever. Some of those officials are quite powerful, Vormesh said carefully. They will resist. Then you will remove them. This is not negotiable. The demands continued. Economic reparations, formal acknowledgement of wrongdoing, protection for smaller species against exploitation by larger ones, a new charter of rights for all members. Each demand struck at the foundations of the old council. Each demand challenged the power of the elder races. Each demand was fair. When Vasquez finished, the room fell silent again. The council delegation looked at each other with uncertainty. Finally, Vormesh spoke. You are asking us to tear down everything we have built. No, Vasquez replied. We are asking you to build something better. The Velkari ambassador rose. His shell had lost its shine entirely. He looked exhausted and defeated, but when he spoke, his voice was steady. 6 months ago, I laughed at humanity. I called you children. I believed you would come crawling back to us within a year. He paused. I was a fool. Perhaps I have been a fool for my entire life. My species has ruled over others for 12,000 years. We believed this was our right. We believed we were special. He looked at Vasquez with something like respect. You have shown us the truth. We are not special. We are just old and blind and arrogant. He bowed, a gesture his species reserved for the greatest respect. I accept your terms. On behalf of the Velkari hegemony, I accept. Let the old council die. Let something new be born. One by one, the other delegates voiced their agreement. Some spoke reluctantly, some with shame, some with genuine hope for change. But all agreed. Vormesh was last. He stood slowly, his forearms clasped together in the Thraxian gesture of surrender. Humanity has taught us a lesson we should have learned long ago, he said. The strongest species is not the one with the most ships or the oldest history. It is the one that adapts, that grows, that never stops trying to become better. He looked at Vasquez. You could have destroyed us. You could have conquered the galaxy. Instead, you offered us a chance to change. Destruction is easy, Vasquez replied. Building is hard. We prefer hard things. The treaty was signed that day. It was called the Geneva Accord, and it marked the death of the old Galactic Council and the birth of something new. 1 year later, a new forum stood on Nexus Station. Humans had helped design it, but every species had contributed. It was open and full of light. Every delegation sat in a circle, none higher than the others. The flickering lights and empty sections of the old station had been repaired. Ambassador Vasquez, retired but invited as a guest of honor, stood at the edge of the great chamber. She watched delegates from 100 species work together, argue, compromise, and build. A young Thraxian approached her nervously. He could not have been more than 50 years old, barely an adult by his species' standards. Ambassador Vasquez, I wanted to thank you. My people are recovering. We are learning to be different. Vasquez smiled warmly. Change is always painful, but it is also necessary. May I ask you something? Why did you not seek revenge? After everything we did to your people? Vasquez considered the question. She looked out at the forum, at the new civilization being built on the ashes of the old. Humanity learned something long ago, she said. Chaos is not the enemy. Stagnation is. Your council was dying long before we left. The corruption, the arrogance, the refusal to change, it was already killing you. We simply made you see it. She placed a hand on the young Thraxian's shoulder. Revenge would have given us satisfaction for a moment. What we have now is better. A galaxy that can actually grow. Species that can actually cooperate. A future worth building. The young alien nodded slowly. Will you help us continue? We already are. We will continue, but not as leaders, not as rulers. She gestured at the forum around them. As partners, equals. That is all we ever wanted. Secretary General Okonkwo appeared at Vasquez's side. The first session of the new forum is about to begin. Will you stay to watch? Vasquez looked at the chamber filling with beings from across the galaxy. So different from each other. So full of potential. Yes, she said. I think I will. Okonkwo smiled. What do you think our ancestors would say if they could see this? Vasquez laughed softly. They would probably say that we took long enough to get here, and then they would tell us to stop talking and get back to work. That sounds like humanity. It does. The first session began. The new forum started its work. Across the galaxy, species that had been enemies began to become partners. Wounds that had festered for centuries began to heal. It would take generations for the damage to be fully repaired. Many challenges lay ahead. Many conflicts remained unresolved. The road forward would be long and difficult, but for the first time in galactic history, every species walked that road together, as equals. And humanity walked among them, not at the back anymore, but side by side with the rest of the galaxy, right where they belonged.